You don't just become a Pistons fan, you inherit it. You inherit the fights, the elbows, the bruises that were practically team currency in the late 80s and early 90s. You inherit Laimbeer's scowl, Rodman's dives into the scorer's table, Isaiah limping on one ankle and still dropping 25. The bad boys didn't just win. They broke you down first. They made you feel them in your ribs the next morning. They made Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson all hate coming to Detroit. 2 championships, almost 3, and a city that found its swagger in every hard foul. But when your identity is built on toughness, everything after feels soft. Every new era gets measured against that snarl, that edge, and it's never enough. When the bad boys were dethroned, they didn't just leave a trophy case behind. They left a shadow, one so heavy that every Pistons team since has been compared to it, and almost always found wanting. You can change the roster, you can change the coach, you can even change the arena. But if you wear Detroit on your chest, the ghost of the bad boys is breathing down your neck. And if you're honest, you kind of miss the days when other teams feared you. The bad boys fade, not with a clean handoff, but with the slow unravel only dynasties know. Rodman traded. Laimbeer retired. Isaiah's Achilles snapping. The sound of an era breaking. By the mid-90s, the bruises are fading, and the banners in the rafters start to feel like they belong to another lifetime. Then comes Grant Hill. Smooth where the bad boys were jagged. A walking triple-double. A smile big enough to sell Sprite to the whole league. Detroit believed, again, he was supposed to be the bridge from the grit of the past to the glory of the future. But bridges need support, and the Pistons never gave him enough. All NBA seasons wasted on rosters built like patchwork quilts. Joe Dumars past his prime. A rotating cast of role players. No second star to share the weight. Hill carried them as far as he could on bad ankles until the bad ankles carried him out of town. Traded to Orlando in 2000. And just like that, the Pistons were back to chasing. Chasing relevance, chasing identity, chasing the feeling they lost when the bad boys left. Because in Detroit, every new hope comes with the question, how long before this one slips away? Nobody saw it coming. Not the analysts, not the Vegas odds, maybe not even some Pistons fans. Chauncey Billups, a point guard on his fourth team, branded too slow for the modern game. Rip Hamilton, running defenders ragged without ever dribbling more than he needed. Tayshaun Prince, all arms and angles, looking like a kid who wandered in from the JV squad until he sent Reggie Miller's layup into another dimension. Ben Wallace, the undrafted wall of muscle who turned rebounding into a blood sport. And then Rasheed Wallace, the mid-season wildcard who brought just enough chaos to make it all work. The 2004 finals were supposed to be a coronation for the Shaq-Kobe Lakers. Instead, they were an ambush. 5 games. A defensive clinic so suffocating, it made one of the greatest offenses in NBA history look mortal. The Palace roared like it had when the bad boys ruled. Detroit basketball wasn't just a chant. It was a warning. For a moment, the city felt invincible again. Not because they had a superstar, but because they had a team. 5 players moving as one. 5 players willing to bleed for a stop. But in Detroit, miracles don't last forever. And even dynasties born from grit eventually start to crack. November 19th, 2004. The Pacers are in town. The Palace is buzzing. The Pistons are defending champs, still the toughest team in basketball. Then Ron Artest fouls Ben Wallace hard. Ben shoves back. Shoves turn into a scrum. And then, the moment that changes everything, a cup of beer arcs through the air and hits Artest. The rest plays in your head like a highlight you wish you could delete. Artist into the stands. Steven Jackson throwing haymakers. Fans spilling onto the court, players swinging back. Security nowhere in sight. It's chaos. Broadcast in real time to the world. The next morning, every sports page screams the same word. Malice. The suspensions are brutal. Artist gone for the season, Jackson and O'Neal losing months, Ben Wallace suspended too. The Pacers never recover, but the Pistons don't walk away clean either. They're no longer the defending champs with an edge. They're part of the ugliest brawl in NBA history. The image of Detroit basketball changes overnight, from organized toughness to uncontrolled violence, from feared to infamous. And while the team still makes deep playoff runs after, something's different. The shadow of that night follows them, a reminder that in one swing a legacy can change. It didn't happen all at once. The Pistons kept making the Eastern Conference Finals, 6 straight trips from 2003 to 2008. Consistency so rare most franchises would kill for it. But in Detroit, each run ended the same way, a loss that felt just a little more final than the last. 2005, the Spurs grind them out in 7. 2006, LeBron's Cavs still figuring it out but cracks start to show. 2007, LeBron figures it out, drops 48 in Game 5, and the Pistons can't stop him. 2008, Boston's new Big Three shuts the door for good. And then the teardown begins. Chauncey Billups traded for Allen Iverson, a move that was supposed to inject scoring but instead drained the soul out of the team. Ben Wallace long gone. Rip Hamilton left carrying more than his share. Tayshaun looking less like the lanky glue guy and more like a man holding onto a rope fraying in his hands. The palace, once deafening, starts to echo with empty seats. The grit and grind identity slips away. Coaches rotate like turnstiles. Draft picks don't hit. And for the first time in decades, the Pistons feel truly irrelevant. You don't notice the exact day the fall begins. But you notice when the climb back up feels impossible. Rebuilds are supposed to have a direction. This one was a maze with no exit. First came Greg Monroe. Smooth in the post, good passer, old-school big man game. Then Andre Drummond, a physical marvel, rebounding like a magnet, the kind of guy you thought could anchor a franchise. Then Josh Smith, the high-flying, stat-stuffing forward from Atlanta who looked like a star on paper. On paper. On the court, it was a mess. Monroe and Drummond clogged the paint like two semi-trucks in a one-lane tunnel. Josh Smith, well, he took more threes than you remembered him making. Spacing? Non-existent. Defense? In theory, yes. In practice, rarely. Every season came with the same sales pitch. This is the year it clicks. But it never clicked. The chemistry was off. The roster construction baffling. The coaching unstable. And when they did sniff the playoffs, it was brief. A sweep by LeBron's Cavaliers in 2016. The basketball equivalent of being shown the door politely but firmly. This wasn't rebuilding. It was treading water in a storm. And every year you stayed in that middle ground, the climb back to relevance got steeper. June 29, 2021. The Pistons hold the number 1 pick for the first time since 1970. And in a draft with no doubt at the top, they take Cade Cunningham. Smooth, poised, a 6'6" point guard who looks like he was built in a lab for modern basketball. It feels like the first real sunrise in over a decade. The post-Bad Boys drought, the failed future cores, the half-hearted playoff runs, all of it can be forgiven if Cade becomes the guy. Year 1 is flashes through fog. He misses time early with injury but still puts up 17.55, showing patience beyond his age. Year 2, the fog thickens. Shin surgery cuts his season to just 12 games. And that's the thing about being a Pistons fan. Even when the clouds part, you brace for rain. By 2024 to 2025, he breaks through. 26 points, 6 boards, 9 assists a night. Triple doubles. An all-star nod. Leading the Pistons to their first playoff berth since 2019. You should be celebrating. Instead, you're calculating how long until the front office screws this up. Because history has taught you that Detroit can find the star. They just don't always know how to build around him. You thought you'd seen rock bottom. Then came 2023 to 2024. The Pistons didn't just lose games. They lost them in bunches so large it felt biblical. 28 in a row. The longest losing streak in NBA history. It wasn't just the number. It was the way it happened. Late-game turnovers. Defensive lapses so bad you could hear groans before the shot even left the opponent's hand. Leads evaporating like puddles in July. Cade tried to carry it, putting up 30 and 40-point nights just to keep them within reach. But the roster was built to tank. Young guys thrown into roles they weren't ready for. Veterans who looked like they'd mentally checked out in November. An offense that stalled into isolation sets. A defense that collapsed on the first dribble. The national media turned it into a punchline. Pistons scores flashed on the ticker with an unspoken, of course. Attendance sank. Even diehards stopped tuning in every night. When the streak finally broke, it didn't feel like a win. It felt like relief from drowning. And in the back of your head, you wondered if the damage done to the culture was permanent. It didn't come with fireworks. It came with the quiet click of pieces finally fitting, at least for a while. Cade Cunningham, fully healthy, playing like a man who'd been saving up every ounce of frustration from the losing years. 26 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists a night. An all-star. The kind of steady brilliance that doesn't just win games, It changes the way a franchise walks into the arena. Jaden Ivey starts to figure it out. The hesitation moves, the controlled speed. Jalen Duren holds the paint like a bouncer at the door. Tobias Harris comes home, a veteran who knows how to pick his spots. And Malik Beasley? He's a flamethrower. Franchise record for threes in a season. Plays all 82 games. For a stretch, he feels like the missing piece. They claw to 44 wins. The city wakes up a little. The playoffs, an actual, honest-to-God playoff series, return. They lose in the first round, but for the first time in years, the talk isn't about lottery odds. But even in the glow of that run, there's a shadow. Beasley's off-season gambling probe, rumors swirling around Ivy's future, and the uneasy feeling that this spark could flicker out faster than it caught. The summer after a playoff run is supposed to be about momentum, about adding what you need to climb another rung. Instead, it's like the front office went shopping without a list. Karis LeVert arrives, a crafty scorer, a secondary playmaker, Duncan Robinson too, one of the league's purest shooters. On paper, they fill a need. On the court, they might just poke new holes. Because Detroit didn't just lose Malik Beasley's shooting, they lost his spacing, they lost Dennis Schroeder's pace, and they didn't replace either with defense. The Pistons now have a half-dozen guys who can hit a pull-up three, but not a stop in crunch time. A roster good enough to hang with anyone for 40 minutes, but lacking the closing punch or the grit to actually finish. It's not that LeVert and Robinson are bad. They're good, but together, alongside Cade, Ivy, and Harris, it's the same Detroit problem dressed in new jerseys, a team that looks dangerous in February and confused in April. The identity isn't bad boys. It isn't the 2004 wall of defense. It's something vaguer, less certain. And in Detroit, that uncertainty is the first crack before the collapse. Troy Weaver is gone. Trajan Langdon takes the chair and says all the right things. Patience, sustainable growth, no shortcuts. Words that sound smart at a press conference but feel like molasses when you're sitting in the cheap seats. Detroit fans know what patience means in this league. It means wait while everyone else passes you by. Langdon doesn't make the splashy trade, doesn't push all the chips in for another star, doesn't even really replace the guys you lost. The big move is standing still. Maybe he's right. Maybe rushing would have been worse. But the problem is you've lived in this middle ground before, not tanking hard enough to draft the next cornerstone, not contending hard enough to scare anybody. And the more you watch Cade's all-NBA prime tick away while the front office evaluates, the more you feel history circling back. You've seen this with Grant Hill, a franchise player dragging a half-built roster into the postseason until his body gave out. Detroit doesn't need more patience. Detroit needs a plan. But for now, it's just press releases and polite promises. It's not because you've never had glory. You have. The Bad Boys. 2004. Banners hanging from the rafters that actually mean something. It's not because you've never had stars. You've had them too. Isaiah, Grant, Chauncey, Ben, Cade. It's because in Detroit, every bright moment comes with a clock attached. You can feel it ticking before the champagne dries. The fall is never far away. You've lived through dynasties dismantled too soon, through rebuilds that became purgatory, through one move away that turned into 5 years of waiting. You've watched the league shift around you, other cities catching fire while Detroit smolders. You've seen promises evaporate in the space between seasons. And yet, you're still here, still wearing the colors, still walking into Little Caesars Arena like maybe tonight's the night it all starts again. Because that's the curse of being a Pistons fan. The heartbreak is constant, but so is the hope. No matter how many times you've been let down, you keep showing up. Because if the spark ever catches again, you want to be there when it does. But deep down you know, in this city, the flame never burns long. And that's why it sucks to be a Detroit Pistons fan.